and welcome to Murder with Friends, the show where friends get together and talk about the darker sides of history. I'm your host, Grace Baldridge, and joining me today are two guys I just love so much. I have Alonso Duralde and Dave White. Thank you so much for coming on Murder with Friends.
Thanks for having us.
You guys probably recognize them from What the Flick and also Linoleum Knife podcast. And how do you guys know each other?
We're married.
I was gonna see. I was like, so how long have you guys been friends? How long have you guys been married for?
Well, that depends on how far you count back.
Right.
We've been together 21 years.
Oh, right.
Yeah, because we're old as hell.
So it's new and exciting.
Yeah.
The first bloom.
Yeah.
We've been legally married nationwide since whenever?
2000.
2 years
No,
ago?
nationwide. Federally
Yeah.
recognized for like the last 2 years, I guess. But
Okay.
We got married in 2008 in California before Prop 8 happened, and that one sort of stuck. But even that was sort of like our third or fourth one by that point.
It stuck like halvesies because the minute they brought in Prop 8, you were sort of like, well, are we still married?
Are we
Like,
not?
What happens now? You know, and the tax people don't know what to tell you, and it's just a mess.
H&R Block is like, seriously, no. Like, I can't deal with this.
We didn't resent it at all.
No.
You were super cool with it. So
Yeah.
I brought you guys on because today we're going to be talking about Ed Gein. And, if you guys at home, you've requested this episode a lot, you're probably familiar with Ed Gein. Was the inspiration for some of the best and also some of the worst, we'll get into, horror movies of the 20th and 21st century. And you guys I don't know anyone in my life that knows more about movies than you both. So it felt like sort of a natural
Oh, we
thing.
totally know people who know more than we do.
Believe me, yeah.
But I definitely
But you don't know them, so.
And I only know like 10 people. So it doesn't say much.
But we are actual film critics, so we're qualified-ish.
Sure.
Yeah, but I was saying before we went to tape, it's always sort of a strange thing to find a case and then reach out to some of my friends and say, hey, I was looking up Ed Gein and I thought of you. I was wondering if you wanted to sit down and talk about it.
This murder, I just had you written all over it.
Yeah. So for someone who had never heard of Ed Gein before, how would you sort of tease what we're going to be talking about today for our viewers?
Ed Gein kind of opened the door, cinematically speaking, for anybody who kind of saves body parts, employs taxidermy methods in their murders. Like, he was the sort of OG for that kind of thing. Like, that's where it all came from.
When you're talking about weird murders, it sort of starts with him.
Yeah.
You know, in terms of the 20th century anyway. I'm sure somebody in the 19th century did something really freaky and theatrical, and there was no, nobody around to notice.
Yeah, but he definitely I also think he kicked off this weird trope that we see in horror movies today of a small town where everyone knows everything about everyone else, and the city folk come in, and then there's some dark secret.
The house outside of town.
Yeah, the house outside of town,
Right.
and everyone sort of protects each other, and it's this weird. There's a weird sort of we'll get into with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the hillbilly murders and the people that cover up for the murder in the town. But with that being said, Ed Gein, who is also known as the Butcher of Plainfield, was born August 27th, 1906. And he was born and raised, I don't know if he was born in Plainfield, Wisconsin, but he spent most of his time in Plainfield, Wisconsin. And at the time of the murders in the 1950s, that was a population of around 700 people. So we're talking a major small town place. And he actually is only responsible for killing two people, Bernice Worden and Mary Hogan, but he was notorious for grave robbing and just exhuming corpses, and you were saying before, keeping body parts, just all very deeply unsettling. And he was incredibly shy and sheltered. So a lot of times on the show, we're talking about serial killers, and they have these very larger-than-life personalities, and they can't wait to be in front of the cameras. And they do it as a way of seeking fame. But with Ed Gein, something that struck me as a little strange was that he was this shy guy who killed, that was really so incredibly mentally disturbed. And I think that kind of brings us to our first clip, which just kicks off exactly the really gross stuff we're going to be talking about today. Let's take a look.
10-7 investigation at info.
Police are probing the Grizzly scene at the secluded farmhouse of Plainfield handyman Ed Gein,
7:30.
who admitted today that he disemboweled and butchered the body of 58-year-old widow Bernice Worden. Authorities found the decapitated body hanging in Gein's woodshed, gutted out and strung up by the heels. Investigators have also discovered the head and face of 54-year-old Mary Hogan. Portions of the bodies of 10 or more people have also been found among the other grisly human body parts. 10 human skulls, furniture made of human skin, a box full of noses, tan skin from a human head, a belt made of female nipples, one small skull believed to be that of a 6-year-old child. Authorities suspect cannibalism.
Box full of noses.
Box full of noses. Yeah, we're gonna get into all the things
Belt
that they
of
found
nipples. Ugh.
at his house. But talk to me a little bit about what we know about Ed Gein prior to the killings.
He was raised in a really isolated situation. His father was an alcoholic and lost job after job, moved the family out of the town to this house in the middle of nowhere. This suited the mother fine, who was, to call her deeply religious, sort of mischaracterizes it because she was wildly fanatical and just hated the world. The kind of fundamentalism where you feel like you have to physically separate yourself from other human beings.
Like in The Witch.
For example, yes. And so she sheltered, the kids. He became absolutely devoted to her. Ed became devoted to his mother in a way that one could call unhealthy.
Yeah, so you're talking about Augustus Gein.
Yes.
And she was the mother of Ed Gein and also his older brother, Henry.
Henry, yes.
And this is, I think, such an important component to Ed's story. His relationship to his family and his relationship to the town, because she would punish him for making friends. She didn't trust the other kids in school. She felt that everyone was corrupt and that that was sort of human nature. That was her interpretation of the Old Testament specifically.
Yes.
And so she didn't want her children to be any further corrupted by hanging out with people. So as a result, he didn't have any friends. And I found a clip of some of his neighbors talking about Ed Gein, and it's pretty strange to watch how they remember him. So let's take a look at that, and then I want to get a reaction.
He'd play with the kids. They'd jump on his back, and he'd give them horsey back rides and things like that. He was just a nice, odd little man.
Well, Ed Gein was always a person that everybody liked to pick on. They'd take a bottle of beer and they would open it up and put a little whiskey in it to give him a little more jolt at noon there, unbeknown to him, to kind of get him going. He was, he was the guy that everybody picked on.
Great.
And also
The guy that everybody picked on.
Also a popular babysitter, which after high school.
Teenage babysitter.
Yeah. But no, the mother not only sort of forbade him from having friends in school, but was also very much of the train of thought that all women are whores.
Oh yeah.
And will drag you down into the pits of hell. And so he basically, he became devoted to her. The older brother got out in the world more, got married, was concerned about Ed's closeness to their mother, and then died mysteriously on a hunting trip with Ed.
Very mysterious.
They found bruises on his skull, and law enforcement at the time, they were like, well, you know what, these are probably nothing.
Well, also, he apparently died in a fire.
Yes.
They were burning to clear a brush on the property.
They were clearing some brush, and this fire got out of control. And then he said that, that Henry was succumbed by the flames and he was killed, unfortunately. And then when he told authorities, I said, well, where is he? Ed was able to lead authorities directly to his body. So if he said that he sort of lost him in the fire and he didn't know where he was, how would you lead him directly to his body?
Right.
And I'm really excited to show you this next clip that I found, which actually depicts exactly the story we were just talking about from the movie Ed Gein. This is what they think happened when Ed allegedly, let's speculate, killed Henry. Let's take a look.
I'm moving out.
What?
I met a woman. I'm gonna go live with her and her kids.
What about Mama?
She'll manage just fine without me. Nothing anybody ever does is good enough for that self-righteous old shrew anyway.
She's one of God's disciples.
She's a harpy, and everybody knows it except you. Why don't you two just get married already? Why did you do that?
Oh, Jesus. Oh my God. Oh God, what did I do?
So from that clip, we really see that Ed's anger, at least the filmmakers felt, was triggered by Henry bringing up his relationship to his mother. So my question for both of you, what responsibility do you think Augusta Gein has in creating the monster that was Ed Gein? Do you think that it was sort of a nature versus nurture, or a very like symbiotic relationship? What do you think the responsibility is here?
I think that any person can come from difficult circumstances and not become a homicidal maniac.
The older brother ostensibly would not have
Right.
become one. Yeah.
But you have, in this family, you have that 1-2 punch of an alcoholic father that we don't really hear too much about. But often that comes with abuse of somebody in the family, whether it's the spouse or the kids or everybody. And that's just me speculating because, again, I don't know too much about the dad.
There's not a lot about him on record.
But the mother hated the dad, apparently, and called him lazy all the time and, dominated the family. So when you have a really toxic situation in a household, if you have a child that is already predisposed to have mental health issues, you might have a problem forthcoming.
I think coupled with the shame as well. That's another common thing, that she would say that Ed was just like his father, who we know she hated, she reviled. And that he truly couldn't do anything right in her eyes. But unlike Henry, who said, all right, well then go fuck yourself, I'm gonna kind of take off a little bit on my own, he still strove to please her.
Yeah. Well, and also, as you pointed out, Ed copped to 2 murders, possibly a third one if he killed the brother, which I'm sure is light for this program. Well, the reason we remember Ed Gein is for the corpse desecration, and all the exhumations that he did, and that is clearly where the obsession with the mother comes in, because he was only digging up women, and he was, he was trying to create this suit of women's skin to literally step into his mother's skin or sort of summon her presence. So his fixation with her, I think, manifests itself more in that aspect of his pathology than the killings necessarily. She plays a part in the killings too, but it's the other stuff that makes him so infamous.
So you think it's more of a mental trigger than a violent trigger? With regards to his relationship to his mother. So she didn't cause him to be violent, she just caused him to have these like sort of mad spells of digging up graves. Because he said that when he would dig up graves, he felt many times in sort of a daze, sort of out of it. And I wonder if that was a consequence of thinking about his mother. It's hard to separate Ed Gein from Norman Bates a lot of the time, because they are so tied to each other.
Yeah.
And I wonder if he had this voice of his mother in his head when he would go to these grave sites.
Quite possible, yeah. He was clearly obsessed with her even after she died, maybe especially after she died. And so I think that's what drove so much of that behavior.
And if you can disassociate, or if your mind just does it anyway, it's not even something you're actively perhaps making happen, you might wind up digging up graves.
Well, Henry Gein dies in 1944, and Augusta Gein dies in 1945. And according to Ed Gein, he started digging up graves in 1947. So there is a direct correlation between losing his family, whether or not he felt close to Henry or sort of separate, it was still his family, and as we saw, he didn't have a lot of friends. And then losing his mother, absolutely the most important figure in his life, sends him on a tailspin, which would eventually lead to murder. And when we come back, we're going to tell you all about it.